Hello, and welcome to Creating a Family, talk about adoption, foster care, and kinship care. My name is Tracy Whitney. I'm the content director for creatingafamily.org, and I'm also the host of both of our weekly podcasts. I am excited to talk with Ginger Healy today about strengthening and building connectedness in our families. Ginger Healy is the Director of Programs for the Attachment and Trauma Network, where she co-anchors the podcast Regulated and Relational. She speaks across the nation on trauma-informed schools, therapeutic parenting, and community engagement. She co-authored a new book called 30-Minute Groups, Navigating Family Dynamics with Ashley Wright. The book is designed to provide trauma-informed, brain-based resources for schools and small groups. Ginger, thank you for coming to Creating a Family and for joining the podcast. I'm so excited to share this book with our listeners.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
I loved looking through the book while I was doing the research for today's conversation because I recognize right away that it's intended for a school setting or small group learning settings. But I also recognized as soon as I saw it that it's something that would be easily tweakable and relatable to families who are interested in healing and strengthening and kind of forging up those family dynamics. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about why you even went about writing this book and kind of where it came from and what need you saw that it would be filling.
Yeah. Well, I'm a school therapist and I'm a mom, an adoptive mom. And so I saw the need, but I have to give a shout out to the publisher, National Center for Youth Issues, because they have believed and known for a long time that we need to get this information to the schools. And my publisher saw this great need of getting the schools and the parents together to collaborate, right? Because healing doesn't happen in isolation. It's like we need to surround the child. So this was a brilliant, beautiful way to do that. And I also have to shout out to my co-author, Ashley Wright. She is like boots on the ground, school counselor every day doing this. And so she was the perfect person to partner with. And I'm just really proud of this book.
Well, I'm excited to dig into it a little bit more with the families. So, what are you observing about the children's needs around social emotional language, self-regulation, connection that would give you all the fodder for this book?
Yeah, everywhere I go, in any school I go into, I will hear the behaviors are more and they're bigger. And we're seeing a lot of anxiety in students. Obviously, this lack of emotional regulation leading to these behaviors, right? Processing challenges. There's just this desperate need from educators saying help, we have help. And so I also know as a parent that that's the same in the home too. Like there is just a need. So it wasn't a big stretch to know we've got to get resources into parents' hands and educators' hands to really focus on self-regulation, connection, and the things that we talk about in this book.
So at home, we families who are raising children impacted by trauma or prenatal exposure or adoption and foster care and things like that often have a different rhythm than, say, a school day has, or different dynamics between parent-child than, say, between teacher and child. So what is some of the initial advice that you would give a parent who's looking at this book to kind of translate these tools into a home context?
Yeah, this is such a good question because I wouldn't want any parent or anybody to look at the book and think that you have to do it this way, whatever that way you think may be. It is designed to be very adaptable and flexible. I want you to think of it as just kind of a template, a starting off point. It is just full of like conversation starters that you might not have known to discuss or might not have known where to begin or might not have felt brave enough to do. But sometimes with a book in your hand, you can, especially if you think of it like each chapter has a story. Well, a story is like an easy way to tell something without any pressure. It's about someone else. But
Yeah.
then inevitably it leads to this conversation of what did you think about that? What would you do
Right.
if that were you? So just modify it and be brave to like try one thing out of the chapter. You don't have to get through every single item in the chapter. And I tell that to the school counselors too. Sometimes you only have 10 minutes. Well, there's a lot that can be done in 10 minutes. And I love actually that parents have a different rhythm because there's never a bad time. And situations and behaviors and emotions, they come up when they come up.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
There's
not
not a
like we're
timetable for that.
so it's not like we're waiting till 4 p.m. on Thursday to talk about that. It's like we got to do it right now and let's talk about it, you know. So it's so easily adaptable.
So many children in our community have experienced trauma or prenatal substance exposure or multiple caregivers or separations before they come to join our homes. And they come to us with varying abilities to trust, to feel safe, to regulate or co regulate or self regulate. And some of our kids don't even really know how to be part of a family.
Mm.
So, why is it essential that we kind of take a step back and assess how to teach our children social emotional language, not just the feelings words of, happy and
Yeah.
scared, but also the capacity to talk about themselves, advocate for themselves, and to talk about relationships in general?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good question. I think some people think that talking about, social emotional language, we're talking about vocabulary, specific things to say. But really,
Mhm.
it's not about vocabulary. It's that we need to build this ability to reflect, to look inside, we have to build trust, especially within relationship and create this sense of safety, not just physical safety, but like emotional safety. So the body recognizes safety. We call it felt safety.
Yeah.
And that is like intuitive for some people, but for kids that have had loss, for kids that have had adversity,
Mhm.
it's not intuitive at all. So we have to be able to give children words, right? And so that they can tell their story rather than just relying on behaviors or letting behaviors tell the story. Because when we do that, and it happens a lot, like we only see the behavior, then we don't recognize what's going on underneath. Behaviors get really misunderstood, they get misdiagnosed, and we don't heal. We just try to like fix or stop. And so it is an intentional practice that is needed, especially for kids that have early loss, early adversity.
So, what are some of the risks for a child that doesn't have that language beyond the vocabulary, doesn't have that language
Yeah.
for being able to talk about themselves and their internal state?
Yeah. I mean, we have this biological need to feel seen, to feel safe, and to feel valued. And that has to be taught, grown, scaffolded, right? And if we don't do that, we leave kids stuck in those feelings, the anger, the fear, their sadness. Now, those are human feelings, but often we don't want to feel them, right? We try to avoid them. And if we are modeling avoiding the feelings, then that's what they learn. And so it just leaves them to like ruminate in this shame. So we have to allow them to safely express, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, so that they can be understood and be heard and learn to not avoid those feelings. Because the other thing that happens when we don't want to feel those feelings is we numb, we avoid, right?
Mm.
It's scary to feel those feelings, especially if you have been punished for having those feelings before. Then you don't. you don't want to express them for fear. We have to welcome those feelings so that they feel safe enough to express those feelings, because they're human feelings and there's a reason for those feelings. So avoiding feelings doesn't work. Numbing feelings doesn't work, because when you numb pain, you also numb joy. And
Yeah.
you can't appreciate joy and hunt the joy and find the joy if you haven't had the pain too. So holding those two truths. Really what happens if we don't allow these expression of feelings is that it gets worse, right? It comes because feelings don't just go away. And so they can change, they can get worse. So allowing them to express their feelings safely allows them to be able to parse them out and figure them out and pause and be able to make a choice, right? Rather than just react. And that's on both sides of the thing. As a mom, I don't love those feelings either. And sometimes I don't want to deal with them. But the truth is, if I don't, then I model to them to don't, right? And then
Right.
I end up reacting. So it's just this like domino effect. There are a lot of risks in not giving this language or opportunity how to fix our mistakes, repair our mistakes. We have to have the tough times so that we can learn how to manage them so that we can keep going rather than just this whole getting stuck in the behavior,
Yeah.
stuck in the feelings.
And I would imagine as you were talking, it occurs to me that kids also run the risk of seeking out kind of what's it called? Imposter versions
Yes.
of feeling
Yes.
seen, feeling valued. They start to put their identity in the wrong things. Or,
Oh,
I mean, worst case scenario, my head's thinking these are kids that would also be then at risk for trafficking and
yes.
exploitation
Yes.
because they don't have a true understanding of
Yeah.
what truly being valued and treasured
Yeah.
feels like.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because the risks can become life threatening when we
Right.
don't understand our worth, when we don't feel safe, because this biological need to feel seen and to have perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are safe places to get it, and there's a lot of unsafe places to get it. But when
Yeah.
you're a child, if you don't know the difference, you
Right.
just want to feel better, right? That's the numbing too, right? The drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the whatever feels good for just a second.
Yeah. The phone addictions.
So many
Yep.
addictions.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to interrupt this conversation for just a second. I am excited to tell you about our library of 15 free courses from Jockey Being Family. If you go to bit.ly/JBF support, that's bit.ly/JBF support, you can access one or all 15 of the free courses. They will strengthen and support your family. And you can get a certificate of completion at the end if you need it for continuing education or foster care credits. I highly recommend them whether you need the credits or not. They're excellent tools for strengthening and supporting your family. And speaking of strengthening and supporting your family, let's go back to our interview with Ginger. So one of the messages that we hear culture say a lot, which I personally cannot stand to hear, is that kids are resilient.
Mm.
There is an element of it that is true, but it's also a huge misconception, particularly when we're talking about our community of kids impacted by trauma, loss, abuse, neglect, any of those things. Can you talk a little bit about why a child who has experienced those things needs very specific intentional scaffolding to develop that
Yeah.
social emotional language and to build their resilience
Yeah.
intentionally?
Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly. We're not born resilient. It's a skill that is developed and scaffolded and modeled. And if we jump to this, we say it because it gives hope, right? And it eases discomfort. But what it does is it minimizes that pain and the hard work that it takes. And it overlooks the need for us as adults it lets us off the hook from really getting in there and doing that therapeutic parenting work. It just reinforces all this shame. You should be able to get over this kind of a thing. So the truth is, resilience really is only built through consistent presence, attuned caregiving. It's all about relational healing. And so especially for foster and adopted children, because resilience, it's not the absence of the impact, it's this ongoing process of healing within connection. And so when it comes to building resilience, what trauma does is it impacts the brain's developmental sequencing. It causes these lags in development, and it also mars our sense of safety. So if children consistently have like these overwhelming experiences, then their nervous system is always activated and prioritizing survival over connection, over reflection, over, they're just trying to survive. And so that part of the brain that's responsible for regulation, for reasoning, for language, it's likely underdeveloped. It's less accessible. And so the only way to really learn it is through having it be modeled, right?
Right.
Or explicit teaching. But really, how we build resilience is through co-regulation. And that's what scaffolding is. That's the magic, is these repeated positive experiences of safe relationship with someone else, where we can share our nervous system. Like a dysregulated child can lean on my calm, regulated state. I can share that with them.
Yeah.
I can also, if I'm dysregulated, share that with them and make it worse. And as a mom, I have certainly
been there, done that.
I have gasoline on the fire because I have a lecture that needs to be heard. And all it did was make it worse and decrease the trust, put a wedge in our relationship. So, okay, getting back to this question of scaffolding, how do we do that? Well, safety first, right? Predictable routines. Predictability feels so safe to the nervous system.
Yeah.
So schedules and routines. If I notice a need and meet that need and respond to it in this calm, soothing way, that just feels safe. And that scaffolds how we handle stress, right? And if I make a mistake, which I will, I apologize. I make it better. I call it out and say, oh, I blew it.
Right.
Let me fix it. And that is a great model of what do we do when we make a mistake, right? So, and then talking about our emotions out loud. I made a mistake. I need a break. I'm not okay right now. I need help. I'm frustrated. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. Like, I'm human, and it's okay to be human. And this is how I feel. And then that opens the door. That scaffolds their ability to go, oh, and be reflective about how they feel. So I just think children learn emotional strength through, not through being told, calm down,
right,
get yourself together, right? But just through this experiencing it themselves, like feeling it. So repetition, right? This positive repetition over and over again, and relational consistency. Like, I am always here physically, but sometimes not physically, but emotionally. Like, I got you. You don't have to do this alone, right? That neural growth in our brain, it happens through repeated experiences of connection and safety. So that's how we scaffold, just that repetition of trust, repetition of making a mistake, but fixing the mistake. And us having this like compassion, yes, but like empathy. If I look at this kid and see the behavior, and it's not a great behavior, if I just look at the behavior, I want to stop the behavior. I want to punish the behavior. But if I look at this kid and recognize they're struggling, they're having a hard time, that just changes something in me that I want to help them. So it's not always easy. I'll tell you that, right?
Well, for sure. And especially when the behaviors are big
Oh,
and,
yeah.
overwhelming, and you're feeling overwhelmed. And if it's
Yeah.
no one likes to feel like they're in the hot seat.
Mm-hmm.
And when your kid is acting in these very big, baffling ways, you feel like you're in the hot seat and you're trying to
Yep.
figure it out, which can be dysregulated in and of itself. So you might not have gone into this dysregulated, but while you're trying to figure it out, you're feeling dysregulated.
Oh, yeah. We could talk about triggers for sure. I got buttons that get pushed.
Yeah, exactly. But I
Yeah.
think too, just you brought up that point about empathy. If we can
Yeah.
stop ourselves for just a moment, take a beat, take a pause, and say, he's not giving me a hard time. He's
Yes.
having a hard time. The first time I ever heard that was Dr. Ross Green
Yep.
years ago when my kids were little. And I just thought that is such a great reframe. He's not giving me a hard time, because that feels so personal. He's
Yes.
having a hard time. And then that summons that empathy and that compassion. What can I do to come alongside of
Yeah.
him while he's struggling?
So good. This whole idea of not taking it personally, easier said than done. But
Right.
if we focus on the behavior, it's very different than focusing on the relationship.
Yeah.
And it's two different outcomes, two different responses. And yep, it's a big deal.
Yeah. You can become teammates when you reframe it that way.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So true. So true.
I think my kids are probably sick of that teammate metaphor, but I'm like, I'm on your team. We are all on the same team here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody wins in a power struggle. How
Right?
can we fight the behavior, fight the trauma together, not fight
Yeah.
each other? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. So, what are some of the themes of this workbook that parents can kind of bring into their everyday life, whether it's, at the kitchen table or driving in the car to soccer practice? Kind of give us a few of the themes and then
Yeah.
maybe an example of how to do that.
Yeah. Well, like the first section is about them understanding their story, understanding their family structure.
Mhm.
So you can talk about like everybody's different, right? Different is not less. Different isn't broken. Each family is unique. And I
Mhm.
love the word unique. So learning to appreciate the differences, right? Some families have two parents. Some families have one parent. Some families have a grandparent. Like we could go on
Right.
all the, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just there's difference. So avoiding comparison, right?
Yeah.
And that every family will have challenges and struggles. No family is perfect. So there's some activities in the book that kind of look at that, look at different families and celebrate different families. And there's
Mhm.
a story with questions. And then, it will open the door to these discussions that maybe you didn't know were ruminating or some shame there about who am I? In fact,
Mhm.
that's one of the themes too, is like, where do I fit in? How do
Yeah.
I belong? What's my role? And there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's just, what do you think about that? So those kind of things. There's another section that talks about reframing, like rewriting your story, navigating challenges. Because the truth is, I didn't want this book to be just kind of surface, like,
Right.
some people have problems. Well, let's get it out there. Everybody has problems. And there
Mhm.
are some really hard things that happen in life and within families. So I wanted kids to know like hard things happen, but that doesn't define you. That isn't your story. That doesn't mean that your outcome is set, right? You aren't the argument. You're not the chaos. You aren't the pain. No matter who's having the pain, that separation of you aren't the pain. There is going to be pain, but you can learn to handle it and to manage it with help, with resource support. And so that's when we start to dive into like your worth and your inner working model, your beliefs about yourself. So that's That's can be heavy chapter, but section, but it doesn't have to be, right? It depends on the kid, what they can deal with, and how you can dose like hard subjects. Watch them, like, we can really dive here, or we can skim the surface and then come back to it later. So all of that. And then the book kind of starts to wrap up with really talking about like confidence, hope, dreaming about your future, controlling your future, making searching for that hope, like that through gratitude, through joy, mapping out your dreams. Like, what steps can you take so that you're really intentional and in control? Because a lot of times kids don't have control. So, where we can streamline that in. So, there's some great conversations within all of those chapters.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that parents can implement those conversations in just regular everyday life? Give us like an example or two of things that people can do.
Well, one of the things that I love in the book is that every chapter has a game called Would You Rather?
Oh,
And in a Would You Rather game, there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's kind of like sometimes hard to know, would I rather do this or do this? And it depends on the day and time. So, even like when you're driving in a car, we have some of my very best conversations with my kids driving in a car, because it totally takes the pressure off. You're not like looking them in the eyes and waiting for an answer. You're just driving. Things are happening. Maybe there's a little music on the radio and you can play a game. Would you rather have ice cream or cake? I mean, that's kind of a silly example, but this book has done it for you as far as questions. So you can print it out, or you can have some of them in your mind. And it really leads to interesting conversations, like, interesting, tell me more about that. You're not saying,
right.
well, that's a dumb answer or that's wrong. You're saying, tell me more, right? So games,
Yeah.
I really, with parents, because I know you're busy and overwhelmed and all of that, games are the best way to build trust in families, especially low stakes games. We're not talking about competitive games where there's winners and losers. We're talking about moments where you can laugh, moments where you can feel like you achieved something, right? And doing it in a just benign, non-stakes way. It really shows your kid that you are interested in them, that you care about them, that it just is so much connection. And these kids, I think we all know this, but I can't say it enough, that especially kids who have been adopted or are in foster care or have these early childhood adversities of loss, they need so much connection, right? Safe connection, positive connection. So if you can do these fun conversations, the stories are a great way to just talk about it. And the games, I just can't say that enough, because I think sometimes we feel like we can't sit down and play a game. But my kids, they love just, I'm thinking of an animal, I'm thinking of a character, and it's, the 20 questions, but it soothes the nervous system because there's no expectation. It increases trust and connection, and it just brings us closer together, allowing for opportunities to really get to the brave conversation. So that's where I would start. What games can you play? What stories can you tell that are low stakes and that just lead you down a path that you may not have been able to get prior to that?
Yeah, I think games like Would You Rather
Yeah.
or I'm Thinking of or 20
Mhm.
Questions or things like that are games that they're already familiar with.
Yes. Yes.
They play them in school as icebreakers, and they play them in Sunday school and
Icebreakers.
all, Girl Scouts and all those places. So they're familiar with it. But then you can kind of mix it up and do some
Yep.
serious questions and some fun questions and some just off the wall, ridiculous questions that will lighten the mood and get a laugh. It shows them, again, not just that you're interested, but it shows them some nimbleness on your part, that you're
Mm,
willing to respond and adapt to what comes out of their mouth. And so that if it's
yeah.
starting to get too heavy and you can see that about them and you lighten the mood or slow the roll a little bit, you're communicating not just that these conversations matter, but their responses in the moment matter also. Because if you just plow full steam ahead with all your list of 20 questions, it's going to go badly.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So
they're going to do whatever they can to thwart you from finishing that agenda. Or the next time you start asking those questions, they're going to shut down because they did not experience it well the last time.
Oh, couldn't have said it better. That is exactly right.
Nimbleness in parenting is not one of my fortes, but it is something to keep shooting for.
Yes, I find myself all the time. In fact, this just happened last night. I had been out of town, and so I came back into town and was catching up with my kids because I had been out of town. And I didn't recognize at first that my daughter was trying to tell me something. I was kind of tired and overwhelmed, and I wanted to basically, like, oh, I missed you. I'm glad we're all back together. Great. Conversation over. That was kind of my capacity. But I just kind of sat there because I was tired, and it kind of got quiet. And then all of a sudden, she started talking, and immediately I went, oh, she needs to. Great. But thank heavens she took advantage of that moment of silence rather than me get up and move on and go to the next thing I needed to do. So that being a tuned thing, it's tricky, but it's magical, right?
Yeah. Yep. So if you have a parent or a caregiver that is struggling with their own skill set in these ways, where can they go to learn or practice or kind of build that ability in themselves so that they can start doing it in their homes?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I would have known. We adopted our son, let's see, he's 27. So, 23 years ago.
Okay.
And oh boy, I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. So grace for that. And I love that now there are a lot more resources and support and other parents that we can, because not everybody gets it. Right. So we have to have our safe place to fall, our safe place to vent where we're not judged and where somebody can go, oh, I totally know what you're talking about. I tried this, right? Places like that. So support from other parents, safe support, right?
Yeah.
We oftentimes need therapy ourselves, which is sometimes hard because I know we're really busy, but I just can't. We need it. It's not that there's something wrong with us. This is hard work. Therapeutic parenting is next level parenting on steroids. And so we need that support in so many ways. There's a lot of really good now trauma-informed, attachment-focused books that didn't exist 20 years ago. So I have book lists that I'm happy to share. I'm sure you do too, but there's great resources out there now that weren't. There's classes, there is support groups and podcasts, right? I mean, this works so well in bite-sized doses. Because the other thing I want to share with parents is you're going to get overwhelmed if you try to read that book.
Right.
But if you take a chapter, or some books are good at just doing like the TLDR at the end, just here's the bullet points. Or a podcast you can listen to for 10 minutes or 45 minutes, but like bite-size it down. Don't get overwhelmed. Just kind of keep going and adding to your toolbox, and then give yourself lots of grace. We are so good at giving ourselves a lot of guilt and a lot of shame about what we should have done different and how we made it worse and we're failing and all that. And so we can't go down that road because it's not the truth and it doesn't help. It makes things worse. So lots of self-compassion. I have recently been diving into the work of Dr. Kristen Neff. She focuses on self-compassion. And what I like about her, for a long time, I don't think self-compassion is bad, but I couldn't internalize it. I could tell other people, but I couldn't really put it into play. And anyway, I finally was kind of diving into her stuff, and she she's a PhD doctor of, psychology and neuroscience. And she turns it, she comes at it from this neuroscience lens. Well, at least for me, if you start telling me this is science backed, this has been researched, we've looked at MRI scans, and here's what changes the brain and soothes the nervous system and heals, then I tend to listen harder. And she really talks about the neuroscience behind self compassion and how it increases our ability to problem solve, and how it actually helps us have better health and well-being, and a million other things that I don't have time to go into, except for I will say she has a website that has a lot of free resources. And I have found a lot of healing in learning how to better care for myself and better set boundaries. And I don't know, if I just am a better mom, right?
Yeah.
Once I'm a better person, and put this into place. So that's
Yeah.
it's been a more recent thing this last year that I have really had light bulb moments on.
Yeah. Are you finding this information as helpful for building your family's emotional connections and sense of safety between you as I am? I'm loving the practical nature of Ginger's suggestions, and I'm going to be trying them around my own dinner table or on a car ride or in everyday conversation with my kids for sure. If you appreciate this or any other of the Creating a Family episodes like this, please leave us a rating or a review, and then tell a friend what you learned. These are great ways to help us improve what we do. They're also great ways to help us get the word out about who we are and what we do. And they give us a nice boost in the arm for our team so that we are all continuing to plug in and bring you the best content we can possibly bring you. Thank you so much for considering a rating or a review or telling a friend. And now let's go back to the podcast. So let's explore a few practical strategies for integrating some of these skills into our daily rhythms, and how these strategies could or should change and grow as our kids change and grow.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the skill of kind of understanding my story and where I fit in my family structure. So what would be, maybe a practical game or a practical interaction that we would have with our children to exemplify that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Where my mind went to first, before getting specific about that chapter, was that there are a lot of things that you can do on a daily basis that just creates this safe environment that allows kids to feel safe in sharing how they feel or recognizing how they feel. And one thing that I will say, and I do this for every chapter of actually any group or lesson that I'm teaching, is like a daily check-in, which sounds really simple. It's like, how are you doing? But there are different ways to do it and teach it that feel less intrusive. Like if we just ask our kids, how are you doing? Oftentimes they'll just say, fine.
Fine.
Right? How was your day at school? Fine. And you're like, oh, great. The conversation just stopped. Right. So getting creative, like one of the books, and maybe it is this one, does the daily check-in, talks about weather. And it looks at like, did you have a rainy day? Did you have a sunny day? Was there any lightning or thunder? And so that sparks imagination and creativity. And when, speaking of creativity, anxiety shuts down creativity. And creativity can shut down anxiety. So it's tricky, right? But any way that we can get those hemispheres talking to each other where we can create, so I always, for little kids, it makes a lot of sense to do something like coloring all the time. But it can look like so much more. The middle school and high school kids love to doodle, draw, sketch on sneakers, things like that. So getting creative in how you allow that doodling and coloring, it really does shift the brain. So coloring is one way, that tactile sensory regulation tools of like Play-Doh or clay or fidgets and all of that. Those are all like ways where there's no pressure to answer a question, but it starts to help you feel better, and that it shifts your mind and shifts your nervous
Right.
system.
Right.
So things like that. But the daily check-in, one of the daily check-ins that I like to do with my kids is teaching them about their brains and asking them where they're at in their brain. Like, this is a calm, soothed brain, but this is when your lid is flipped. And so it's just a hand signal. I'm not okay. I'm okay. Because
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes I love to talk, obviously, but a lot of our kids don't or aren't there yet. So that's why things like the doodling or the hand signals or not using words, other ways to communicate, work really well. Adding in music and just ways to be creative, or just things that, again, soothe the nervous system and make them feel safe, but they don't have to sit and answer a long-winded question or give you a long-winded answer. It's just so that they need extra help right now, or they're doing okay, and that they know she wants to listen to me right now. And
Yeah.
so creating that, safe environment. But you remind me which one that you had asked about.
Understanding the narrative of where you fit within your family structure.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about that, I think about the very earliest conversations that we have with our kids. I'm mom. This is dad. This is your
Yeah.
sibling. What is a sibling? What is a brother or sister? And, I have a huge family on my side of the family. And, having those conversations with my kids about, well, this is my sister. So just like you two are sisters, she and I grew up together and we're sisters.
Yeah.
And starting to explore those conversations, I feel like was a great way of helping them see where they fit.
That's so good.
But I feel like it was also a great way to, because, very often saying, okay, that's my sister and we grew up together, lent itself to stories of our family.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Now you're reminding me, there are worksheets in the book that can kind of map that out, where you're writing who is in your life,
Yeah.
what their role is or where they fit in, how they're related, and how they can be a support. So there are worksheets that map that out, because kids oftentimes are very visual and are very concrete. And I think we take for granted that they know it. And see, what you said was so perfect about how that all of a sudden leads to family stories.
Yeah.
Right? So that they can start to build their story too. This whole idea of family and fitting in, we have this biological need to belong.
Right.
And that gets really tenuous if we have had more than one family or different placements or things have changed, right? So reinforcing this, you belong, and this is what it looks like, and that you can create that. What responsibilities do you want? Having kids collaborate, participate. I loved your word teammate in a family helps them belong. So there are worksheets and activities that really lend itself to those lessons.
And I think when you're raising a relative's child, so speaking now to our kinship community, if you are a grandmother raising a grandchild, or an aunt or an uncle raising a niece or a nephew, helping the children understand the larger family and then boiling it down to where in that big family constellation they are, is not just going to reinforce the statement that I brought you to live with me so that you can be safe and you can grow up, in a way that will lead you to healing. But I did that because you are part of our larger family structure.
Yes.
You do belong here. And wherever you go, we're with you because you are part of our family.
Yeah.
And for kinship kids, that I think would be remarkably healing to be able to have that conversation in those ways and recognize that, mom and dad, I can't live with mom and dad right now, but mom and dad are still part of this very large family. And
Yes.
so am I.
Yes. That's so good. Yeah. Everyone matters,
Yeah.
right? So just normalizing that's so important. I'm so glad you brought that up.
And I think as we watch our kids grow and grab a hold of that information, we
Mm-hmm.
have to be willing to build on the information as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
our strategies should change and grow as our kids change and grow. And so we can't still do these, elementary level conversations with a high schooler. We've got to
Yeah.
be willing to, and sometimes that takes informing ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes that takes scaffolding ourselves because we could have some, unresolved trauma of our own, especially if it's a family caregiver situation. How do you suggest that we pay attention to when it's time to kind of shift up to the next
Yeah.
age or level of understanding?
Yeah, that really is good. And it really is, there's no playbook, right? Because one
Yeah.
size fits one. And especially with our kids with neurodivergence, right?
Yeah.
It depends on so many things. And typically with kids who have been adopted and have had early loss and all of that, they are younger than their chronological age. This was something that I really had to learn as a mom. And I didn't understand it, like how trauma can cause these developmental delays. So that is really, I think, an important starting place, knowing where that child is at developmentally and meeting there and keeping tabs on that. And that's how this attunement is how you kind of know when you need to shift and do more. You can kind of watch when you're talking to kids or doing activities with kids, it's like their window of tolerance, how much they can handle before they start to shut down. And we have to recognize when they do so that, like you said, we back off, we make it lighter. And then when we're going back in, seeing how far we can nudge it and do that. And so I think it's just like this constant ongoing watching and attunement, and you start to see when they handle things, when they achieve something, when they're meeting these milestones and growing and having longer conversations or leaning into certain topics and want to know more. What are their questions really asking? Do they want to know more, or do you need to back off? So I don't have like a tried and true, this is what it
Right.
looks like, because it is so different. But I love the idea that you're asking that we what to look out for, because we do, and that we do need to shift, and we do need to, that's how we meet the needs, is understanding where they're at and how to do it. So I think especially when kids are in that upstairs part of the brain and they are open to these conversations, that's where we can really explore how much more do we need to talk? How many more questions do we need to ask? What is really what do they really need and how we get there? So
Right.
being aware of all of that.
And it strikes me as you're answering that question that some of those signs that it's time to maybe level up a little bit are also some of the signs that our strategies are being effective
Yes,
because we're
exactly.
increasing their tolerance for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And typically we know that it's being effective when we see behaviors decrease, right? Because the need that the behavior was trying to fill is being met in a different way. And they are learning how to manage those emotions rather than just react. Right.
Right.
And so I love seeing that we're doing better, and we're having less fights, and we're having less frustration, and we're having more capacity to have brave conversations, right? Our relationship is stronger
Yeah.
because, it really challenges the relationship when we're just struggling all the time, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we see that trust grow, to me,
Mhm.
that is like a huge indicator that
Yeah.
we're improving and we're
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
headway.
So we're kind of wrapping up a little bit here with some practical tips. We always love to end with very practical tips that parents can take away. Most of what we've done so far has been pretty practical. But I'd love to hear when you're working with a family that is just maxed. They have this long list of to-dos all the time. We're all there. We've got therapy. We've got after school, activities. We've got homework. We've got cheer practice, and we've got the book fair, and we've got all these things that are on our massive to-do list. So how do we kind of make room for all of this and not perceive it as one more thing to do, which I think many adoptive and foster parents probably feel like conversations like this are just one more good thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
But how do we implement it so that it's not just like a to-do mandate?
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because I know as an adoptive mom, I have felt that.
Yeah.
And one of my dearest, best friends who has adopted her children, I would always say to her, "Oh, I read this good book, or listened to this good podcast, or I went to this conference. Join me," right? And she would always say, "No, because I will just leave feeling like I'm not doing enough, and I am so tired." And I was like, "Okay, you're right. I get it, right?" So,
yeah.
So first and foremost, you're doing more than you think you are, right? We have to be compassionate to ourselves and give ourselves grace, and know that the mistakes we are making can help, like if we recognize them and apologize for them and model how to redo them.
Right.
Now, I learned this best thing from Dr. Perry, and it was therapeutic dosing. That, like, all the therapy in the world and all the great long lectures in the world filled with all the good books in the world actually don't help. It just overwhelms us if we tackle them that way, right?
Right.
The brain heals best in very small, positive moments, doses.
Yep.
So each time there is a good moment, there's just a hug without a lecture, right? There's just a smile, or "I'm so glad you're home from school. I missed you."
Yep.
That heals the brain. So that's why I say you're doing more than you think you are. Just this creating this safe place where a kid feels like, "I can talk to mom. He will listen." That's how we heal. So therapeutic dosing, right? Just small moments of positive. Let everything else there is a lot that you would be doing, but there's a lot you're doing. Okay. And then the glimmers, find the good, look for the good. If we're always scanning for the other shoe to drop, because we've been living that, and that's kind of how it feels sometimes, that'll be the truth. But if we just focus on the good, focus on the strength, we'll notice it more. Like, joy grows when it's recognized and repeated. So we got to lean in that way. Now, I say that, but I'll tell you, this is like the hardest thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yeah, but what about, yeah. And so for me to like set things aside and just go, you know what? We're just going to focus on the good, celebrate the wins, all of that. It's hard, but it works. It really does. It just creates more positive moments. So focus on those things, right? Because we just tend to focus on the behaviors. We want the behaviors to stop. Yeah. But if we focus on that relationship and the good and just those positive moments, it does catch the behaviors. It does fill the need that the behavior is trying to fill. So connection, safe relationship, right? Just shifting our expectations. I was so wanting my son to catch up because he was delayed behind.
Yeah.
But I was like making it worse because I just had these expectations. They came from a good heart, but they did
it's a lot of pressure for a kid, right?
So much pressure.
Right.
Pressure with me.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Rather than just relaxing and enjoying those good moments that grow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not a very concrete answer, but it's just this overall like,
Yeah.
keep going. You can do this. You're doing
Yeah.
more than you can, than you think you are.
I love that you're doing more than you think you are, because that is grace filled on one hand, but it's a relief on the other. I mean, it's
We
not just,
need that.
yeah, we need the relief.
Yeah.
So, Ginger, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the book. I'm very excited. I hope people check it out. It's fun and engaging. I looked through, several of the different exercises, and they're not hard to tweak for, bringing to your family dinner table or to a long car ride or, hanging out, watching a movie together. There's good questions you can ask each other in the middle of a movie that, might be bringing up stuff for your family. So thank you for all the time and effort that you put into creating this book and for bringing it here to us today to kind of help us figure out how to tweak it for our families, not just the school setting.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.